When Grant Wood painted American Gothic in 1930, he could not have imagined that it would become one of the most famous works of American art. Over time, it has been admired, reinterpreted, and even endlessly parodied. And yet, the painting, that clear but somewhat somber portrait of a farmer holding his pitchfork beside a woman, continues to divide opinions. Some see it as a sincere tribute to rural life, while others view it as a mockery of its customs and values. Critic Robert Hughes once said that Wood offered a kind of apple pie Eden, but many also saw the work as a sharp critique of the traditional rural way of life. The truth is that the painting is more ambiguous than it first appears. It is neither entirely affectionate nor entirely satirical. It holds a strange balance, mixing sincerity with distance, warmth with unease, calm with tension. And that is exactly what we are going to explore next. The first thing that stands out in American Gothic is the striking similarity between the farmer's pitchfork and the seams of his blue overalls. It's almost impossible to miss. The farming tool seems fused to his chest, as if it were part of his very being. Perhaps that's why he grips it so tightly, his fist clenched around it. That same tension fills the atmosphere of the painting. The woman turns her head slightly to the left, as though looking at the man beside her, and yet also beyond him. Neither of their faces shows the slightest trace of joy. The farmer's expression is stiff, dry, and almost uncomfortable. Nothing in the scene feels accidental, but everything seems just a bit out of place. This oddness has led many to read the painting as a satire of small-town rural life, a sharp, ironic portrait of its Puritan values and the conflicts hidden within them. On the surface, the image projects authority and rigidity. With their immaculate clothing, the pair appear stubbornly attached to the ideals of hard work, austerity, and strict living. Looking more closely at this pair, new questions arise. What is their true relationship? They could be a stern father watching over his seemingly incorruptible daughter, or perhaps a husband and wife bound by duty. There is an obvious sense of formality between them, but also an emotional distance that conveys coldness and disconnection. One striking detail is the woman's position. She stands slightly behind him. This makes it easier to sympathize with her, while seeing him as distant or even intimidating. Her clothing is buttoned up to the neck, her face calm but tinged with resignation, as though her thoughts were elsewhere, caught in bitter reflection. The painting heightens this tension with subtle details. Her hairstyle is neat and proper, straight to the ears with a simple part in the middle, as Wood himself described it. Yet a loose blonde strand falls over her shoulder, like an unconscious gesture of rebellion against her role in the scene. The cameo brooch at her collar adds yet another layer of meaning. It is delicate, feminine, almost refined, and stands in contrast to her austere appearance. Some have read it as an allusion to Persephone, the Greek goddess abducted by Hades and forced to live in the underworld. Persephone is tied to spring and agriculture, fitting for a farming family. But her story also evokes themes of captivity, cyclical return, and the constant tension between outward propriety and inner unrest. So, should we read American Gothic as a satire of rural life, or as a more complex tribute to America's provincial spirit, one that Grant Wood himself seemed to value? It all began with a house. The title American Gothic does not refer to the couple, but to the wooden farmhouse with the pointed Gothic windows standing behind them. Wood discovered the house during a drive through Eldon, Iowa, and was immediately captivated. Later he explained, "I saw a trim white house with a neat white porch, a house built with severe Gothic lines. That gave me an idea, to find two people who, by their very character, would fit into such a house." For him, the architecture and its imagined inhabitants conveyed restraint, decorum, and a sense of the old-fashioned. The style of the house is known as Carpenter Gothic, popular in 19th century America, marked by steep gables and pointed windows. In the painting, Wood exaggerated these features. The window is taller than in reality, the roof more sharply pitched, and even the figures' faces appear elongated, all to heighten the Gothic effect. This verticality extends into the farmer's clothing and his pitchfork, echoing the house's upward lines. The whole composition feels shaped by this repetition of sharp, rising forms. For his models, Wood turned to people close to him. His sister Nan posed as the daughter, dressed in a patterned apron with zigzag trim to suggest period style, while the father was portrayed by the family's dentist, Dr. Byron McKeeby. Wood also drew inspiration from late 19th century rural photography, where farm families often posed solemnly in front of their homes as a statement of pride, identity, and belonging. That same air of solemnity breathes through American Gothic. Grant Wood spoke very little about American Gothic after its debut. What we do know is that he submitted it to a competition at the Art Institute of Chicago, where it won a bronze medal and a cash prize of $300. Shortly afterward, the museum purchased the painting. Wood was 39 at the time, and this was only the third of his works to be shown outside of Iowa. When he did comment on the painting, he underlined its ambiguity. "There is satire in it," he once said, "but only as there is satire in any realistic statement." The truth is that Wood remained deeply connected to the rural world of Iowa. Born in 1891, he spent most of his life in his home state, where he nurtured a passion for American antiques and architecture. He also designed theater sets, created jewelry, and took on interior decoration projects. During the 1920s, he traveled several times to Europe, spending time in Paris, Munich, and Italy. In those years, he worked in an impressionist style, with thick brushstrokes focusing mainly on landscapes. But in 1928, while visiting the Alte Pinakothek in Munich, something shifted. He encountered the sharp realism of the German New Objectivity movement and the meticulous detail of the Flemish Old Masters. That experience transformed his art. His brushwork became finer, his attention to detail sharper. Back in the United States, Wood also developed a renewed interest in his own country's identity, an interest only strengthened by the arrival of the Great Depression in the 1930s. In 1935, he summed up his ideas in an essay titled "Revolt Against the City," where he encouraged his students to remain in their region and paint what they saw around them. For him, the Depression had forced American art to turn its gaze inward upon ourselves. Wood expressed it in these words: "The Depression has taught us many things, and one of them, not the least important, is self-sufficiency. It has sent men and women back to the land. It has made us rediscover some of the old frontier virtues. By separating us from more artificial values, it has brought us back to certain true and fundamental things which are distinctly ours to use and exploit." To contemplate American Gothic is to confront what Wood called the old frontier virtues. Gradually, his artistic vision turned inward, toward the local, and he became one of the leading voices of regionalism, a movement devoted to depicting the life, history, and landscapes of the American Midwest. Exactly what those frontier virtues meant to Wood remains open to debate. What is certain is that he considered them valuable and worth remembering. Yet his personal life adds another layer of complexity. Many believe that Wood was a closeted homosexual and that his hasty 1935 marriage to Sarah Maxon, a singer from Cedar Rapids, was more facade than true partnership. Art historian Richard Meyer warns against searching for microscopic traces of Wood's sexuality in every painting, but in pre-war America, even a hint of such rumors could have destroyed an artist's career. In that light, American Gothic can also be read as a reflection of the tension between private desires and public expectations. The distance between the man and the woman in the painting conveys a discomfort that feels universal, the experience of being trapped between tradition's demands and personal longing. The whitewashed house, the starched clothing, and the gravity of the scene all seem to symbolize a rigid way of life, one difficult to escape, yet equally difficult to endure. Perhaps this is the paradox Wood was presenting, a portrait of real life as he experienced it and in some ways admired, yet one burdened with constraints and unease, all filtered through the lens of a bygone era. Today, nearly a century later, American Gothic remains one of the most iconic images in American art. Its very ambiguity is key to its endurance. It allows multiple readings, adapts to whatever the viewer brings to it, and can be solemn or mocking, clear or elusive, all at once. And like every great work of art, its power to keep raising questions is what secures its place in history. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I'd love to read your thoughts about this artwork in the comments. And as always, let me remind you that if you'd like to have this piece in your collection, you can purchase it now from our website. Shipping is completely free worldwide, and you'll receive a reproduction as faithful as possible to the original, with every detail carefully preserved. You'll find the link in the description. Thank you for your support, and see you in the next video.